Welcome to Resume Optional Sections presentation. We are going to cover today all of the different parts of a resume that you could include in your particular situation, but are not required. So are not things that we would say every student needs to make sure that this is in their resume. We're going to start with talking about objective statements. Now, in general, the Zane Career Center, we do not recommend most students using an objective statement, and I'll get into why in a little bit. However, objective statements can be really helpful for some folks, in particular if you need to do some explaining about your history or your current situation. For instance, if you are applying for a career outside of your major and you need to make the connections about how you have the skills necessary to do that career, that can be a useful way to include an objective statement. It can also be useful when you're making a big career change that doesn't make a lot of sense in a linear sense. So, for instance, if you were working in marketing and decided all of a sudden that you wanted to go into journalism or something. So you would want to explain that career change and why you're qualified to do that sort of change. The next is if you have an atypical career path. So maybe you worked for 10 years and then decided you wanted to go to college, and you kind of want to explain that period and why your path looks a little bit different than other people currently at Western Michigan University. The next is to explain a lack of experience. So if you don't have paid experience, but maybe you have a lot of leadership and involvement experience that you know makes you a really outstanding employee, this can be a great use of the objective statement. Now, why do we have objective statements as an optional section in the resume? The reason for this is most students, when they have an objective statement, it sounds like all other students' objective statements because there are a lot of things that are very similar about students. You're studying things, you may have had an internship, and in general, they all start to sound very, very similar. So that's why we don't necessarily recommend them. They're also kind of dated, so they're just something that isn't that useful to an employer. They're probably going to skip over, and it's taking up the most important real estate, the top of your resume. And so we really want to replace that with education and experience at the top. However, some people really love their objective statement and want to include it. And if that's you, go for it. We support you. We do want you to follow these steps, though. Please start with a strong trait of yours. It's very boring to say current Western Michigan University student. That fits thousands of people. So start with something that's unique to you. And then add a few skills to describe yourself as a professional. Next, state the position that you're applying for at the company. So that means you should be updating your resume with every single company that you apply to. And then last, keep it short and make sure not to use personal pronouns. I mean, me, my, we. Do not use any of those pronouns in your objective statement. Now, the next section that is recommended as optional is your skills section. We in the Zane Career Center really believe that you should use those for measurable skills. So in particular, this looks like programming languages, like knowing Python and HTML. It can be for certifications. So if you have a high level knowledge of Excel or some certifications, this would be a great place to list those. And then lastly, if you know multiple languages, so if you know Spanish, Arabic, German, etc., make sure to list this in your skills section. It's not that helpful to list proficient in Microsoft Word. You're creating a Word document when you're creating a resume, so you're showing your proficiency in Word. Another thing that I see a lot of is people listing skills like critical thinking, problem solving, communication. Now, these skills are so important to include in your resume, and absolutely they should be in there. However, they shouldn't be under the skills section because you're not displaying how you actually use those skills. So we recommend those skills be put into the employment section, which you can find the video on that to talk about your soft skills there. Another section that you can put in if you need to fill some extra space or if you've done some really cool high-level coursework is the relevant coursework section. So we recommend this when you need to fill some space if you're a first-year student. So you may not have higher-level coursework, so this is where you could put some relevant coursework to the positions that you're applying. The next, however, if you are a senior wanting to include it, any of your project-based practical experiences that you've had would be awesome to include in your relevant coursework section. Specifically, those project-based courses are really cool. In addition to that, if you have any coursework that's outside of your major that you think really set you apart, this would be a really great place to include this as well. So that is what we recommend there. The reason relevant coursework is optional is just because experience is so important. And a lot of times with relevant coursework is we often see people including kind of courses that everybody takes in the curriculum, and so that doesn't really show how you stand out as a candidate. However, again, if you follow those guidelines that I just went through, you will stand out if you have unique experiences from the coursework or if you've done something way outside of your major that kind of sets you apart from the pack. So that's it for the optional sections of your resume. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we will see you next time.